Hi everybody, my name is Hina and today's presentation is going to cover recipe reports and trend tools for the twin column cGMP scale chromatography systems. We'll begin by viewing several slides. We'll give you a brief overview of what the recipes are in our software architecture. The system operation is controlled by means of local PLC controller with a PC interface. So it's a controller and a computer in conjunction. The pre-programmed process sequences are included and they are assembled into recipes to perform required functions. Operating recipes and recipe parameter data is entered and maintained within the interface of the personal computer, and that's within the SQL database. Recipe data and modifications are managed in a 21 CFR Part 11 compliant manner, providing for secure data acquisition, retrieval, appropriate access level control, perform or verify tracking for recipe management, and secure batch reporting. Audit trail, as also part of 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, is a capability which is provided in the software design. So currently the slide that we are viewing shows you a YMC control architecture, which is a pyramid that again demonstrates you our automation, which is divided into 4 distinct layers. The first layer of automation control, as you can see here on the very bottom, would be control modules. And control modules is the lowest level of automation. The functionality of control modules is the functionality of individual devices, which could be valves, which could be pressure switches, which could be analogs, pressure transmitters, etc. All these control modules are working in conjunction to build next block of automation, which is equipment modules. This is the third highest level of automation. Equipment modules are used to perform discrete control tasks, such as, for example, flow control, flow passes, etc. So example would be a group of valves working together to, for example, open the inlet channels or outlet channels, or make a pump use a certain point as its flow point, which is based on an analog device. The next level of automation is the process sequences. And this is the second highest level. Process sequences are usually configured by YPT and are used to perform certain function within a specific process. And that function is subdivided into steps within that overall process. A process sequence, equipment modules and control modules, also transitions and state logics are part of the overall picture for the automation hierarchy. Recipes are the highest level of the automation control. Recipes are stored in the SQL database of the computer, of the HMI computer. They are created and authorized by the end user with appropriate access level. Depending on the system, they can be configured to control or execute any portion of the entire process. And the examples of that would be system preparation, specific product processing, system cleaning, steam in place, etc. So at this point, we will continue discussion over the recipes by showing you the demonstration of one of our live standard systems, which you can currently see on the screen. This system is a twin column, which is currently located here at the YMC and is used for presentations. We will describe recipes in more detail by creating a recipe in real time and executing that recipe again in real time, And again, we will provide you the insights on how our automation platform works in terms of recipe creation. So our new YMC-based software, which is included as part of HMI, includes two blocks here in the footer of the screen, as you can see, one of which says recipe edit and the second one is recipe run. So in order to begin, we would need to create a recipe. So a user would need to first log into the software and then proceed to the footer panel, which is the recipe edit panel. Recipe creation is very easy. First, we will need to select a unit, which again, this system is a twin capture system, so it has two units. One unit, which is a batch unit, provides the batch operation. It could be usage of one column, of the second column, or two columns sequentially. The second unit, if you can see here, is a twin capture, which provides you with the capability for continuous capture chromatography. So for our demonstration, we will switch back to the batch unit and we will create a recipe. The process is very straightforward. In order to do so, we would need to click the new recipe button and then enter the name for the new recipe. We will choose a very simple name. It would be demo and click OK. Our new recipe has been created. Further on, in order to configure the recipe, we would need to go into a second tab here on top of the screen, which allows you to drag and drop function blocks of the recipe, just like this. So we will create again the demo. We will drop several blocks. And then we will make this recipe do a loop cycle, and then we will do another block, and then we will end. Now we will connect our blocks, like right here. Graphic sort of guides you. Now we will select the sequences which are currently in the library. By right-clicking on the sequence block, you would be choosing the one you would like to be part of the recipe. You can always go back and change the sequences, their order. You can change the parameters. You can insert and delete new ones. So for this particular demo, we would choose the batch setup for the first sequence. We would choose the buffer priming for the second sequence. We would, again, just for demonstration purposes, create a cycle, which will come back to the buffer priming just once. And then the last sequence we will choose would be the column process sequence. So now we will save our newly created recipe. We will make it look a little bit more presentable. And now we will go back into the recipe list with our newly created recipe selected, and we will go ahead and set up the parameter lists for the recipe. So the first sequence, we will not go into details of the parameter lists. It's just needs to be said that everything is user-friendly and very intuitive. So if it's a buffer priming, here we have a choice of what we're priming. So no stands, 1 stands for a no and 2 stands for a yes. So for this demonstration, we will choose, again, no for channel 1 for all the valves. And then for the channel 2, we will select 2 of them as for the example purposes. And we will set the timer here in 2 seconds. We will keep the changes. As you can see down here, we can discard and close. Can keep the changes. We can store the parameters we have chosen this time as defaults, or we can recall the default parameters. So the next sequence that we will choose is the column process, which is typically used for things like product load within the batch operation. Also, column regeneration would be a good example. Storage would be a good example as well. So we will choose column 1. The flow rate would be set to volumetric. We will leave the configuration for the outlets as is set currently. We will be only using channel B. Again, for this demonstration, we will let this prime for 6 seconds. Then we won't need to do anything with the UV because it's just a simulation. And then we will disable the usage of channel A, and we will leave channel B as enabled. We will choose the flow rate as 6 liters per minute, and we will choose the target process method based on time. Again, this is just a demonstration, and the time will be set to 30 seconds. This will be sufficient to be able to see the flow paths in a demonstration of the live running recipe. So here is our recipe put together. Let's make sure we save our recipe. And before we begin the demonstration of actual recipe run, I would like to go over a few options that you have available here. So for any recipe, new or existing recipe, you can add description. So let's say we can store our new description and we'll populate here. Also during the recipe run, it will populate in the top right corner of the header. You will see it as we continue with running the recipe. You can duplicate the recipe. You can purge the recipe. So our newly created duplicate, let's purge that. Then let's select back our demo recipe. We can also edit the revision. This is important during the production because currently we will have copies of revision 0 and revision 1. And you could further on select to, for example, make the revision 1 be a production. And here we're coming into the 3 stages of the recipe creation. The first stage, as we have been exploring, is a development phase. The development phase allows you to create, to modify, and to run the selected recipe without need for the perform and verify verification. And this is meant to be just for development purposes. Once development is complete, the recipe will go into production. So let us take our demo 1 recipe with a revision 1 and let us approve it for production. So approval is 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Comments have to be entered. Also username, password are required. Approver comment is necessary as well. Approver and verifier are users of the software with appropriate access levels. Currently, our recipe has been approved for production, and if you can see here that it has been moved from development into production. And let's explore what the differences are between the development and production. So now, here is our recipe. We can go ahead and take a look at the parameters, but let's try editing those. It's not possible, and there is a reason for it. because production recipes are not meant for updating. They're meant for production operation, which means that operator can always come in, find the applicable recipe, initiate it, but will not have a chance or a possibility to make any updates. The next stage of recipe life cycle is called archiving. Archiving also requires the approver and signer verification. So we will take our recipe here and we will archive it. So currently we have a computer has been disconnected. We will connect back up. This is a little bit of a technical difficulties with the remote sharing of applications. So currently we will continue our demonstration just as soon as our file loads back up. Meanwhile, I would like to again stress the differences between the development and production and archiving versions. So the development stage allows for a developer, for the administrator, to be able to update the recipes as per need basis. Production allows for operator to come in and initiate and start the recipes. And archiving of the recipes allows for the possibility for to keep track of what has been done in the database that you could always come back to as per need basis. So here is our application that has been loaded back up. So we will log in. So we're logged back in and we will go back to our recipe edit screen. And this is also a good demonstration that in case a disconnection does occur, we haven't lost any information that we have saved. We can go back and verify one of our recipe sequences to make sure that our parameters have not changed, and this is exactly the case. We have made certain selections and it looks like that everything has been saved correctly. So this is again a good demonstration of how safe the system is in terms of the database storage and the backup. So we will go back to our archive attempt, which was something we were trying to do as we received the disconnection, and we now can see our recipe, which has been put from the production back into archive. We will have a much better look of what happens with the archive recipes again once we get to recipe running. And let's go back to the development, select our recipe. And one thing that also should be pointed out is that we have also global parameters that are available for the recipe, which are not specific for any sequences, but they're also editable within the development stages. So global parameters, just like recipe sequence parameters, cannot be updated within any stages other than development. So we now are ready to go over to test our newly created recipe. So in order to do so, we need to go into the recipe run mode and select our existing recipe and create a new batch name. So let's call it test. And then all we need to do is click Start Recipe in order to begin. So right now you can see that we have a green frame around our recipe. We have some information that has been populated in the top right corner of the header, which indicates the status of the recipe, its name, its description, its duration, its operator ID, etc. So we will quickly go through all the steps. And we will enter some information here again for just demonstration purposes. And now we can go back to the main screen and we can actually see that while the recipe is running, our priming sequence is doing a 12-second purge of one channel that we have selected. Then this is channel 2 that we have selected. Now, if you remember, we have a loop cycle. This is again for demonstration purposes only. So we're expecting to see the next time around for the buffer priming to occur once again. And here it is. So we again set the loop cycle to 1. So we will expect to see valve priming. This is the second valve. And the next sequence that we have in line is a column process sequence, which is a 30-second procedure, which will use our column, which is currently in line. So we will let the buffer priming sequence end. So column process, and here it is. And we're currently doing the 6-second purge, after which we are now using the flow stabilization timer. And just to make a note, while the system is running, you can always go back and update the current parameters while in development to, for example, set the timer to something other than what it is. Here we go. You can always go back to going from step to step. So let's do that. And again, you can always see that you have the recipe control buttons that are here. We can see the run data, which gets populated in the boxes here. We can, while recipe is running, we can go ahead and add some notes. We can save them. We can also take a look at what the global parameters are. There you go. And we can put the recipe on hold, shut it down. For example, let's do that. So now our recipe has ended, and we can always see that our data has been saved. And this brings us to a second topic of our webinar, which is reporting. So in order to see or view the data, we can go back to our main screen, to the footer channel, and then come back and bring up the report screen, which is again located near the recipe screen. And we can select our batch name, which again gets filtered by last 10 batches right here, but everything is available. We can take our recipe, which has just finished, and we can click generate report. And this is just a one-time click in order to grab the data from the database and create the report. It takes a second for the report to download, but once it becomes downloaded, it can be viewed or saved to the hard drive to any location at a later date. So our demo report has several sections, and we'll go back to the report editing tools in just a second, but I just wanted to demonstrate that the sections that are currently available here is the cover page, is the note section, is the recipe section. This is the run data section. This is the information, sequence information. This is the parameter sections for every applicable sequences. And we also have the commands which were given by the operator, and we also have trends. So we will close this report out, and now we are ready to explore some configuration possibilities of the reports. So we will go to engineering screen and locate the button that says the report configurator, which is again comes as a part of our software and allows you to choose any type of report and make edits to the way the report is getting set up and also printed. So let's take an example of the demo batch report. This is one of the 4 types of the report, along with the recipe report, along with the tuning report, and along with the twin cycle reports. All 4 types are available for not just for demonstration purposes, but for usage on every system. So demo report has the most sections that are available. So here in the middle of the page, you can see all the sections that are currently available for adding to and from the report. So the batch cover page allows you for to locate any of the information as applicable for your process. Then you can have your recipe layout. The sequence data is something that is along with the sequence information, sequence parameters is not configurable along with global parameters. And then you would have alarms and events, and this provides you a more advanced control with the query text for the database. So the interesting example would be trend. And now let's try to add a section. So for example, we only have 1 trend, as you could see in the report example. So let us add the second one. And for this particular trend, let's give it a title. And let's select the historian tag. All of them, by the way, are located here. So let us select the tag and let us change the color for blue just for demonstration purposes so it's easy to see. There it is. Let's put it to auto scale and let's save this change. And now let us test our change by closing the configurator and now going back to the reports, selecting our batch report, which was the batch that we currently used, and generating that once again. Here you go. Again, give it a second to grab all the information from the database. Okay, and let's go to the end of this report to see whether our update has been taken place. So, okay, so here is our new chart with a selected tag, which was this one. Color is blue, the name is right here, and the auto scale has been applied. So this is how easy it is to configure and edit the reports. And speaking of how to save them, again, it's just an Adobe Reader, which is saving the reports to their default location. But you can select and choose to save your report to, for example, your desktop. And let's do that. So we will select to do that. It is saving. And now if we go back into the our report screen, again, we can see that our reports have been generated. So the second good example of the reports is our demo recipe report. So this gives you a good information as far as what the recipe has been about. So our small demo recipe that we have been creating is located here, and we can take a look at it and see that the information that is applicable to the recipe is the only thing that shows up in this report. So there are 2 more types which we will not go into details over in today's session, but this is also the pump tuning report and the twin cycle report. The twin cycle report is available for when elution sequence is present, and is usually typically used in the continuous chromatography scenario. So, and once again, once we were viewing the report, we were adding a trend. So this brings another good topic for discussion in today's session, which is trending. So you can see how trends show up on the report as a static input. Well, we give you another possibility of the dynamic trend viewing and information. So here is the trend screen, which again comes as part of HMI, and it has certain tools which are available for trend updates and edits. So you can choose to use the toolbar, you can choose the date and time, you can choose the pen list, and we provide you with a very quick and easy access of the trend pens. So let us select a couple. And with one button click, you can load those trends on the screen. And here they are. And you can always also select your batches. So our current batch has been right here. And once we refresh the trends, you can see that here's the dates and times which were applicable to this batch. And for demonstration purposes, let us see another batch which has a really good information input. So again, we're only viewing the two pens that are here. And then let's scroll down a little bit and view another time frame. So here it is. And again, like every application, we provide you with a number of different tools that you can use. And just a few quick examples. You can, for example, select your trend trace editing. You can take your axis and you can update it like such. See how the screen changed. You can do things like overlay. You can stack the axis and you can do something like the zoom. So here it is. You can also select different pens. You can delete traces, add traces, etc. And you can always come back and to reset the trend. So at this point, we will be concluding our presentation on the general overview of recipes, reporting, as well as trending. Just a brief cap up of what we have taken a look at is that we have a system which is currently allowing you to create the batch operation, to create a sequential batch operation, or create a continuous capture operation using our software, which is 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, which means that it allows the user to be compliant. And it is available currently from YMC as a standard or custom system. And it is also coming with the support for the process and automation.
Thank you very much, Hannah. That was an excellent presentation on this topic. This presentation was sponsored by YMC Corporation. YMC is a leader in chromatography, producing bench and prep scale HPLC and LPLC systems, packing resin, and columns. YMC is a global company with manufacturing offices in over 10 countries. Just a reminder that other aspects of this topic are covered in focus webinars and available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search on YMC Process Technologies. Okay, let's bring it back to Hannah for Q&A. And thank you, audience, for your questions. We do have a few of them. Let me start off with Hannah. How many levels of access are there in the software?
So our software provides several different layers of access, which are usually configured by the end user. We do have a default configuration which subdivides groups for operators, maintenance supervisors, engineers, administrators. And typically the administrator group is the one with the most privileges and the operator is the one with the least privileges.
Very good. Next question. Can the data be transferred to my central DCS?
Of
What are the
course.
options?
Of course, we have currently 3 database locations, if you can call it that way, that are local to the computer. The PLC would be the first location. Then you would have the SQL database as a database storage, and you would have the PyHistorian as a second location for the storage. And of course, the data can be transferred at any point, and we would need some insights from the customer on how they like to proceed with via direct connection or via a secondary application, and that is it.
Okay, just 2 final questions. What happens when the hard drive is full? Does my data get overwritten?
So we have a limitation of the data storage, which again is only due to the space that is on local computer hard drive. The easiest way to bypass the overdrive becoming full, and what happens then is the computer just doesn't work anymore, so the hard drive needs to be cleaned, is to back up the data on a regular basis from the backup location that we provide onto a remote location, or set up the backups to be delivered to the remote location directly right at the beginning.
Okay, and the final question. For continuous runs, how long does it take to generate a report?
For the report to be generated takes seconds. The SQL database supports multi-query, and it is a very quick information input and output. So in order to generate a report, the data needs to be converted into the PDF format, and this probably takes the longest, and while you're reviewing that, it would be less than a minute.